Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest in the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today's guests are Steve Chamberlin and Ann Lewandowski, who are co-founders over at Equitable Evidence. Steve, Ann, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you. Great to be here.
All right, so I'm looking forward to today's conversation. We're going to talk about using AI to achieve health equity. So a hot topic, AI, how that plays into health equity. We're going to get into that. We got a lot to unpack here today, but we'll start this episode the way that we start them all, with what we like to call our Mission Matters Minute. So at Mission Matters, our aim and our goal is to amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Steve, Ann, what mission matters to you?
So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak about Equitable Evidence's mission. It's both very simple and complex. We're using AI to track bias within the healthcare system, looking and seeing how it influences things like clinical protocols, payment methodologies that ultimately influence healthcare outcomes. Mm-hmm. And this was really born out of my fear as a patient in seeing how AI was being used to ration care and potentially reinforcing bias. So when I saw a call for how to develop the future of evidence, I flipped the script in my mind and thought, what if we could use AI and its ability to review massive amounts of data to see where the pain points were for underserved people?
Whenever I have co-founders on here, I always have to ask this one: how'd you meet? How'd this idea? How'd this come together? I can tell you my co-founder's story. I met my co-founder. I always tell people I swiped right on LinkedIn, kind of. So I met my other co-founder here. We've been together for 8 years ever since. Match made in heaven, I say, and I can't do it without Chirag. So always want to hear the co-founder's story. How'd you come together for this company?
Yeah. So kind of a similar kind of story where Ann had this fantastic idea of needing to do something better for patients.
Yeah.
And so she was telling a mutual friend, okay, here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm thinking. And so she told her, oh, I've got just the person that you need to meet that's already working with AI in healthcare. And so she introduced us. And so we just really hit it off. And just started talking and sharing about, okay, who does what? How do we want to get the ball rolling? It's just been a great partnership, just because we really have not only great personality that is, meshes well with each other, but each of our strengths. It's perfect as far as me bringing the technology and the AI side to it with her healthcare background. So even though I've been doing this a while, she's just a wealth of knowledge on the health side. So it just worked out well, and it's been going strong ever since.
And Steve,
what's your story, Ann? What's your side of the story? And before you answer that, I have to tell you this. So sometimes I'll interview co-founders separately, and I'll hear the first one, and then I hear the other story. I'm like, that's not what they said. But you have the privilege of you're both doing it at the same time, though. So, Ann, what's your side of the story?
Well, I think the first and most important part of the story to note is that Steve has convinced me that we are not on the Terminator timeline.
There we go.
So
okay.
That's very important to note. But really, like he said, I approached a friend. I was reviewing opportunities and thought pieces to challenge my thinking around AI. And I saw a question about how could we make evidence that influences the next 10 to 15 years of healthcare more equitably. And that really flipped the script for me on AI and machine learning. And so I did approach a friend. So it's an arranged marriage. It's not swiping right on LinkedIn, but arranged marriage instead. And she introduced us, and, I thought he was amazing. What he's doing is amazing. And it complemented my skills and opportunities very well. And I can't say how grateful I am for him. It's been a true blessing to start a business with him.
Amazing. So as we start to kind of unpack the topic here, let's start by just defining this. What bias in healthcare? Like what does that mean? Like, let's start kind of basic here. Like, what does that mean? Why does it matter?
Yeah, so bias and healthcare is a very hot topic. I've worked in health equity for about 14 years. I worked in rural health, started a coalition in vaccines focusing on delivering the COVID-19 vaccine equitably around the state of Wisconsin, and joined a large national pharmaceutical company that talked about health equity as well. And really, there's many pieces to bias in healthcare. There's implicit bias, where I might present as a woman or a person with darker skin or without adequate English skills or the ability to really talk about my disease. And of course, those have influence on how a physician or caretaker might view me and how they might treat me. And then there's more overt bias that we can think about, such as denying pregnant and lactating women access to clinical trials, and really, or the exclusion of women in clinical trials until the 90s, or, inadequate representation from certain populations like BIPOC or, Asian Americans and stuff like that.
Yeah. And so now looking at as we get further, so now thank you for defining that, by the way. So now we have a basis for the conversation. So now if we connect that with AI so how does this piece of it work? Like, how does the fact that things are moving so fast to where now maybe some of those decisions in the past, those were like somebody made that decision, right? Like it was a group, a committee, whoever that said that somebody could participate or not. But now with AI and just how things are moving so fast, like how do we connect these two? Like where do we start with that?
Yeah, so it's a couple great points and a wonderful question. Technology has been in the works for quite a while on helping people make decisions both in healthcare and outside. I mean, if you think about it, as far as just in general, something that people probably can relate to maybe a little bit easier is HR, finding job. There's so many resumes. And so technology has been already sifting through those to bring keywords that people are searching for a particular job that they're trying to hire to make that happen. And so you keep evolving that with technology and finally getting to the point where you're using AI or machine learning to be able to manage that process. And so with this, we're trying to do some of those same things. We've been already using AI or machine learning for healthcare. For my company, it's been really more on the administrative side, if you will. We're not looking at trying to solve how to better care for somebody. It's been kind of like what we're talking about today. How do we bring better care and bring the tools so that people can really focus then on getting care to those individuals? So what we're looking at here is not trying to, like we were saying before, not trying to build a new Terminator to try to take over things, but we are trying to be more responsible and be more transparent. So those are transparency as well as the protection of the personal data. So those are some of the top issues. And in the industry, that's finally really starting to happen. There are some state laws like Colorado that are trying to put some things forth that require that to happen with different companies. And some of the new startups are using that as their primary focus, is how do we keep things safe? So that's one of the things that we're trying to do with this as well, is we're never going to be selling any data. We're never going to be using it or selling or giving it to anybody else. We're actually just trying to make it a better process for the patients to be able to find this better care by using technology to go through these millions of different types of transactions and all the different kinds of plans based off of location and some of the different characteristics that Anne was already bringing up, to make it a little bit easier for humans to be able to find that right plan so that they can get the care they need.
Yeah.
What I've learned from him is really that AI and the algorithms and machine learning start with a set of data. And as a patient, my biggest concern was these data sets are based on human interactions, right? And if we've already established that bias, both implicit and explicit, are huge problems in healthcare, then of course we need something that starts to quantify and highlight where those challenges might be experienced so that we can really start to use AI's power for good rather than reinforcing what we already know to be potentially very bad experiences for people, leading to very bad outcomes.
How does this lead to better patient outcomes? How can it?
Yeah, so I'm going to take that one. Thanks, Steve. I think about it this way. Our first project, we anticipate being in multiple myeloma. And what we know there is that people with Black skin often are diagnosed much earlier and have much worse health outcomes than the typical, what healthcare might think of as the typical multiple myeloma patient, somebody who's older, a white male, et cetera, et cetera. And so what we're hoping to do is, sort of look at what is the base of evidence, what does it say about what experience might be somebody be having with multiple myeloma, and then working with hospitals so that as they are developing their own AI clinical algorithms, we can say if a person with darker skin presents and they're in their 40s, we know, and they're in pain or whatever, you should, just to be safe, right? It's a blood test. It's not a lot of money. It's not like we're saying, go on and do a huge biopsy, but just flagging that, have you considered multiple myeloma in this case for this patient, because the evidence says there is the potential for that. Now, it's not telling doctors what they have to do. It's just helping them understand that if they've not checked that, it's a potential issue where maybe that patient does have a disease that they're not immediately recognizing, because when they think of multiple myeloma, they think of a 70 or 80-year-old white man.
Yeah, whenever we have like something like what you're trying to accomplish, like health equity, like it's a big topic. I mean, when we think about the medical industry in general, the healthcare industry in general, you're talking to healthcare providers, you're talking to hospitals, you're talking to doctors. There's a huge education piece around this. Like, where do you start? Like, where does someone start with this?
So I'll start, Steve, and then I think your experience with Sensa is going to be really great. So there's a ton of effort going into health equity, and I think that's part of the reason why I thought now was the time for equitable evidence. Plans are starting to be scored on their attempts to create more health equity and other opportunities, and hospitals are thinking about it. How do we avoid these adverse outcomes or worse outcomes? Because of course, with value-based payment, that immediately contributes to the bottom line. So I think as we start the work and really build the algorithm and understand, we have the opportunity to go in and talk with people who have stated that this is very important to their organization. And Steve has very good experience with business development, so I'll let him step in and talk about what he does.
Yeah, so we've had great experiences working with some of the doctors, hospitals, different practices, as well as patients, as we're developing, designing, putting this together. And so it's not only working with them up front to understand, okay, here's some of the different challenges, here's some of the different experiences, but then being able to get right down into the trenches, as you'd say, being able to work with them, get their feedback. Some of the times, for example, with some of the doctors, we'll actually go to their practice and wait between times between their patients so that we can talk with them, get their feedback, and do some changes and such. But so part of that process of being able to make sure that it is smooth, works well, also comes down to some of the technology side. So on the technology, we are using the same technology that some of the large insurance companies are using. banks, the Department of Defense, actually the CERN Super Collider, which is Oracle's database. It's their autonomous database. So what that means is the database is even using AI. And so what that means is that as soon as the data gets to the database, it's immediately encrypted. And there's safeguards for the personal information as well, so that everything is masked. And it's so secure that Oracle can't even get to it. So if for some reason we lose the keys, it's gone, it's done. So it's starting from scratch kind of thing. So it's super secure and scalable, and being used on a global scale. So it's one of those nice things, all the way from the database to the machine learning to the new Gen AI that they've also integrated into the database, all makes it a complete stack so that it's all reliable and then fits into the model that we were just talking about of being able to get it out there for people to use easily from anywhere.
And Steve, going a little bit further, like kind of down that line, you mentioned the Department of Defense. I mean, I see this as being potentially used by, I don't know, policymakers, think tanks, research groups. I mean, the applications are pretty wide. Am I off on that?
No, you're exactly right. I mean, this kind of technology is being used in a lot of different areas, and that's actually some of the things that Anne and I have already been talking about, and is already generating a lot of great ideas on how we might be able to make this available to others, kind of like open source, if you will.
Yeah.
So as far as some of the algorithms that we find so that they're not biased, so that people are able to see that this is really a transparent type of process, and we are keeping everybody's interests at heart, and how we're taking some of those extra steps to make sure that we are thinking about everyone, making it sure it's inclusive and not just focused on, the older white guys that are typically the focus of a lot of these different programs. So we're really trying to make sure that it's available for everybody.
Sorry, Steve. A representative older white guy.
And what do you think this evolves into? Like, as we get further and further down that, I don't know if we'll call it the continuum of health equity. Let's just say it's not static. We're getting closer and closer with every step we can take here, with new data, with new insights, as it's trained more, as there's like the sets evolve. Like what do you think this evolves into? Like, let's dream for a moment. We're entrepreneurs.
No, that's all good. Anne, do you want to go first, or you want me to?
Why don't you go first, and I will take a moment to compose my thoughts.
All right. So some of our customers are actually already excited about this, and they were coming up with some similar kind of ideas and how we're looking at this. And so some of where we've actually already started applying it is the pre-certification process, because that's what this financially fits into. Is that how can we, their perspective being a hospital and practices, which are, okay, how do we make sure that as we're bringing in patients for surgery, that there hasn't been some procedure or some medicines or, whatever's happened in the past to manage their issue is not going to impact our current surgery. And so what we're looking at is being able to use AI for being able to look for some of those different red flags, pull data off of medical documents, and being able to search non-structured type data as well as the structured, and then being able to allow the people that have been doing this on a regular basis help train the system. Okay, here's the different things to look for. Did we miss something? Okay, training it to look for some of those things in the past. So then that way, again, the patient is having a better experience with being able to make sure that everything goes smoothly with their surgery. There's not anything that's been missed. But then on the other side, helping out the providers, the doctors, their surgical teams by making sure, okay, that they don't have any surprises as they're going through and doing that. So it's kind of a win-win. And then you can actually see, obviously, with Equitable evidence is that that's a natural tie-in. Okay, how do we make sure that for some of these different programs that with all of that information that we have that we can bring to the table is make sure that some of the people that really need the care that maybe doesn't have the right kind of coverage right now, we can actually make some recommendations back to them to say, okay, here's something that you should maybe look at prior to going further down this path of healthcare that could provide you better care, better coverage so that you can actually get what you need. So it's a lot of this is a natural fit and it's a win-win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Adam.
No, go ahead. Did you want to add to that, Ann?
Yeah, so I think from my point of view, I really come at it from a patient, and I think about my own experience as a patient. It's complex. I have 2 autoimmune conditions, and controlling one has made one not fit the standard of evidence. And so I do think that I am very empathetic to the fact that for many people, the standard of evidence that's used, whether it's the clinical standard or the payment standard, does not fit who they are and what they feel in their own skin. And so what I really hope is that we're able to work and bring together a coalition that starts to understand what is it like to be a complex patient, because everybody talks about people like me costing the system the largest amount of money, but we're not very good at managing them. We're also not good at managing people with culturally sensitive needs, or even diagnosing certain types of population like skin disease on darker colored skin. And so for those reasons, I really hope that as we move more and more towards value-based payment and quality initiatives, that we can take some of that burden off in terms of, because we hear about physician burnout, nurse burnout, how much these quality initiatives are damaging our workforce while also enhancing the real care that people deserve and should be having, that is personalized to them, right, in the state, but also really recognizes what they experience in their own skin. So that's my hope, is that we can bring providers, insurance companies, policymakers together to really enhance care for every American.
It's great. Well, Ann, Steve, I just have to say it has been great having you on the show today. I mean, what's next? What's next for both of you? What's next for the company? Like, what's next?
Well, we need to do some fundraising. I'll be really honest, but I think like I said, the first disease state that we want to tackle is multiple myeloma, really starting to see and how to frame that so that we can really start to disrupt some of those health disparities. And I'll share a story of why that's so important to me personally. I worked as policy and advocacy director at a major pharmaceutical manufacturer. And in the course of my duties, I went to a Light the Night event, which is the leukemia and lymphoma lighting up the night, creating hope for cancer survivors and those in the middle of their cancer journey. And a Black woman shared her story about how it was to be diagnosed late, not be recognized immediately. And, she had a family, she was young, and it just left me with this urge to really help make a city in my own state, Milwaukee, which is known for its health inequities, better and more equitable place.
Steve, any final words in your end? What's next?
Just trying to
tell me the tech side. What you got up your sleeve?
It's really, I'm sorry, it's really an exciting time for technology. There's so many things that are going on. And there are there's some actual really cool tools that I just found out about yesterday that I can't wait to get my hands on, that's going to make our process even easier. So again, it's really kind of funny with what we're talking about. It's actually using AI to help generate the code that we need. for actually building out these tools so that we can actually do it faster and better.
You're going to have to convince me on that one, Steve. I'm not sure about this whole AI to train AI thing.
There goes your Terminator timeline. Oh, there it goes. It all comes back.
I know, and it's probably so obvious. I'm sorry, but I am a geek at heart, and all this technology stuff is just really gets me excited. So,
but how do we know it's not biased?
Exactly. So it's making sure that we do the right thing, and then and putting a lot of this together so that we can actually start showing some of these different models of, okay, this can really work, this can really happen, and it's here today.
Yeah, it's great. Well, if somebody's listening or watching this and they want to follow up and they want to learn more and continue to follow the journey, or even you mentioned that you're going to be doing some fundraising, like how do people connect? How do people connect and keep the conversation going?
So we do have a website. It's equitableevidence.com. And of course, my email there is Ann@EquiEVU.com. So feel free to reach out and give us a shout. And we can't wait to get to know your audience even more.
Awesome. And for everybody's watching and listening, just so you know, we'll put all the links to the website, all that other good stuff in the show notes so that you can just click on them and head right on over. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters, this is a daily show. That means each and every day we're putting out new content for you, bringing on new ideas, new entrepreneurs, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along in your journey. If that sounds interesting, we welcome you. Hit that subscribe or follow button so that you get the notification, because guess what? Daily show. Tomorrow you're going to get that notification. We're going to have another episode for you. And Steve, this has been so much fun. Again, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Adam. And I can't wait to catch tomorrow's episode.
Yeah, it was our pleasure. Thank you very much.